Spoilers for Marvel Spider-Man 2 along with some very hot takes for the game are going to be present in this video. You have been warned. So Spider-Man 2 is already out, and I've already made a non-spoiler review on the game where I've given my general thoughts about the game. I've gone into very vague detail on what I think my personal opinion is on the game, but there are a few things that I simply just couldn't discuss because they were spoilery. So this video will go into more depth about what I think about the game and certain moments that I possibly don't even agree with. There's also a lot that I couldn't talk about the narrative, but in this video we are going to go back and we're going to analyze the narrative, and I'm going to pick it apart and tell you what I like and what I don't like. So first things first, is the narrative good? Is it great? Not really. So I'm not going to sit here and say that this game isn't great and it doesn't blow out the water, because it does. The only issue that this game had was that it had to compare up to its prequel, Marvel Spider-Man. Marvel Spider-Man at the time was basically lightning in a bottle. The game was filled with a lot of emotion, and its narrative was that good that people upheld it to be one of the best adaptations of Spider-Man in recent history. However, I feel like Marvel Spider-Man 2 doesn't do as good as a job as the first at capturing that same charm and the same essence that the first game gave to us. I feel like this game prioritizes epic moments over those really heart-wrenching, heartfelt, emotional, in-depth moments with characters. And there's nothing wrong with that, and it's not to say that this game doesn't have emotional moments, because it does. However, I feel like this game gives us gasping fan service rather than those Aunt May death scenes, if that makes sense. For example, we had Anti-Venom, we had Symbiote City, we had MJ turning into Scream, we had Venom being playable. And it's not to say that these things didn't make for a great experience, because they did. However, I feel like the reason as to why this game was a great experience is different from Marvel Spider-Man 1. And that is because, like I said, I feel like these moments were really awesome to see. Felt like more of an epic. However, the first game was a little bit more grounded in emotional storytelling. But it's not to say that the characters were weak or anything, because the characters were completely fine. Everyone had their own little mini character arc, and every character had their time to shine. All the characters got the closure that they deserved, including Peter, Miles, and MJ especially. I really like that this game goes into depth with the balance of being Spider-Man, because this is something that is very well known by Spider-Man fans to exist within the character's mythos. However, I feel like that work-life balance of Spider-Man has never really been something that has been paid off like this in such a way. Like, for example, Peter suffering consequences in his personal life because of Spider-Man has always been a trait of the character, but never have they done an actual character arc surrounding the work-life balance of Spider-Man and paying it off by Peter almost taking a back step. And this leads me into my next point, and I'm actually kind of mixed on this ending. You see, while Peter taking a backstep is technically fulfilling his character arc that he has in this game, I actually don't know whether I agree with him taking that back step. Even though he's not retiring, I feel like Peter ignoring crime in the first place kind of goes against everything that Spider-Man is. And it's this dilemma, right? Because obviously Peter can take a back step because Miles Morales is there to take up the mantle as the main Spider-Man. Inherently against Peter's nature to ignore crime. That's not why Uncle Ben died. That's not why that sacrifice had to be made for Peter to learn his lesson. He is selfishly putting his own personal life ahead of those in need, which was the lesson of great power comes great responsibility. Peter still has that great power, therefore his great responsibility should still be to attend to those people. Like, for example, what if that crime at the end of the game going down was someone dying, or maybe potentially a situation similar to what happened to Uncle Ben? What if Peter found out that he could have got there on time and didn't? That's what I mean. That's all I'm saying. So even though his character arc is fulfilled, and it is probably the best ending storytelling wise for his character and his character arc throughout the game, I still don't know whether it really fits within what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man in the first place. But enough about Peter, let's talk about Miles Morales. Now, Miles I thought was very interesting in this game. I thought there was a section in the middle of the game, especially when Peter eventually got the symbiote, that I felt like Miles kind of took a back step from the main story. And I get that, because the main story is with Peter, Harry, and MJ, and the story goes that there is a wedge forming between Peter and Miles, and their relationship is kind of breaking down ever since Harry got back, and ever since Peter got the symbiote. So Miles naturally is going to be separated from the main story, but I didn't feel like it did his character any good, because all of his side missions and everything that was happening with Miles at this time was, I felt, a little bit repetitive, and I didn't find myself being as interested in it as I was in the main story. However, when it came back around around towards the end of the game and his conflict with Mr. Negative being resolved, I felt myself being way more interested in Miles's character. And come the end of the game, I'd even argue that Miles had the greater story and had the best payoff. Speaking of Mr. Negative, I absolutely love his story in this game. It's not often that you get to see Spider-Man villains get redeemed in the way that Mr. Negative was in this game. And I'm really happy that they decided to do this because I think it adds an extra layer of depth to the character and really shows what Insomniac can do with some of these Spider-Man villains. Him also giving his power to Peter not only gave us the awesome moment where Peter became anti-Venom, but also was a representation of Martin Li's character arc and his redemption. Now let's talk about some of the character endings that I really didn't like. I really didn't like Norman Osborn in this game. Yeah, I'm just gonna say it. The more I think about Norman Osborn in Marvel's Spider-Man 2, the more I dislike his character. Not because I dislike him as a person, because inherently Norman Osborn isn't meant to be that likable as a character anyway. What I mean is, I think his character is just straight up bad. At first, they don't really give him anything else to do other than being there for Harry. And yeah, I get that's his main purpose throughout the game because obviously his son is dying. However, in the first game, I felt like they gave Norman Osborn a little bit more to do. The mayor of New York City, he had other responsibilities, he had other things to carry on his shoulders, and it showed the audience how ruthless Norman Osborn can be. Like, for example, the scene where he retracts Otto's funding, all the scenes with Sable, and all the scenes where he has to try and protect the city. It's really showing the power and capabilities that Norman Osborn has. However, in this game, I felt like the only thing that concerned Norman Osborn was Harry, when really there's a lot more going on in Norman's life than just Harry Osborn. I know that sounds horrible to say because Harry's quite literally dying, but from a storytelling perspective and a character perspective, I felt like they could have showed possibly maybe how Norman's work is suffering because of Harry. Maybe Harry's health decline is taking a toll on Norman mentally. And maybe we show that through the decline in sales with Oscorp. Maybe we show that through his reputation being tarnished because he isn't making it to meetings. Maybe he's standing up the board. Maybe he's not interacting with the company enough. I would have liked to have seen more of that side of Norman Osborn in this game because I felt like it would have made his character a lot better. Also, it probably would have resonated his character with the audience a lot more as well. But the one thing that annoys me more over anything is how Norman Osborn actually ended in this game. So when Harry first escapes from Oscorp, Norman approaches Spider-Man and tells him, "Save my boy." And that is the last interaction Norman and Spider-Man will have until the very end of the game. So obviously then, as Peter and Miles, we go out and we stop Venom. And eventually, when we stop Venom and we destroy all the symbiotes, we place Harry on a hospital bed. Norman arrives on the scene, and then he says, "What did you do to my boy?" What? What do you mean? And I don't care what anyone tells me, I do not get this whatsoever. I cannot grasp the concept of Norman telling Spider-Man to go and save his son, and then when he does that, Norman is mad that he saved his son. This doesn't make any sense. I guess the only thing that I can think of is that Norman potentially thought Harry would be completely alive and well. I don't know. But even Dr. Connors said, who by the way is Norman's right-hand man, right-hand scientist if you will, that the only way to save the city and the only way to save everyone else is to kill the host of the symbiote. So Dr. Connors literally told Spider-Man to kill Harry, but Spider-Man was like, no, I can't kill Harry. And Norman's like, save my boy, and that's exactly what he did, but for some reason, he's mad at Spider-Man. And what annoys me the most is this isn't just something that's going to be played off as some kind of side story. No, this is the setup and the catalyst for the Green Goblin. And it makes me so mad that it came from a moment like this, which was probably the poorest thing handled in this entire game. Either way, we can't go back and change it. Hopefully, they expand more upon it in Marvel Spider-Man 3 or potentially even a DLC for this game, because I don't think it was done very well at all. Real quick, while we're actually on kind of a negative wavelength, another thing that I hated in this game was the technology. Yeah, I know this is a very controversial and possibly touchy subject in the Spider-Man fandom, but just like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Peter Parker has way too much technology. You are one of those people that complain about Peter having too much tech to utilize in the MCU. Whether Peter created it or not, can't say that you like it in this game, because some of the stuff is absolutely ridiculous. ridiculous. They have 3D printers in their web shooters? Right, okay, so where's the funding? Where's the money? How does Peter even do that? And he's basically just Iron Man. He has nanotech spider arms. Now, I will admit, gameplay-wise, and we'll come on to this later, they were awesome, right? It provided something a little bit extra for Peter, and obviously Miles has his Venom Blast abilities, so Peter would naturally pale in comparison until he gets the symbiote. However, nanotech arms? It's not very Spider-Man in my opinion. There's also one scene with Miles and Prowler where Prowler snatches Miles' mask and then he like swipes it and then he says, oh, all the locations of places you need to go are now in your mask. What? Seriously? I feel like technology in this game sometimes allows itself to push the narrative forward when it really doesn't need to. It feels kind of like a cop-out, and yeah, we're in the Marvel universe, yeah, of course, mad technology exists, and magic exists, and loads of stuff exists. It just kind of takes away from the story a little bit, especially with a grounded character such as Spider-Man. Anyway, I wasn't a fan of it. Luckily, it did kind of retract towards the end of the game, obviously getting the symbiote and then getting anti-venom. It wasn't present as much, but either way, I wasn't a big fan of it. Harry and Peter's relationship, I think on a more positive note, was done really well. It did feel quite natural, and their chemistry was really good together. Especially all the Coney Island stuff when you're playing with MJ and Harry as Peter. I thought those scenes were really great. Even though Harry and Peter's relationship was done really well in my opinion, I still didn't resonate with it as much as I did with Otto's. Now, the reason for this could be maybe there are many other characters in this game. There's a lot more going on. And like I said, the emotional depth isn't quite there as it was in the first game. So maybe that could be a reason. I don't know. But either way, I thought the relationship was good and it did its job. And it made for a satisfying conclusion when you had to fight Harry as Venom. Now let's talk about Kraven the Hunter, because he was by far the best part of this game. One thing that I love about Kraven, and I even mentioned this in my non-spoiler review, is that you have to work for his backstory as you play the game. Notably through the Sandman crystals. Every time you uncover a Sandman crystal, you learn more about why Kraven was hunting Sandman, which obviously ties into Kraven's backstory. So it's like the more that you play the game, the more that you understand, the more you learn about Kraven as a character. And the game makes you work for that, because not only do you have to play the main story, you also have to do side quests as well to learn about Kraven as a person. At first, I will admit, the fact that he just wants an equal to kill him felt a little bit shallow, like he was just a man with a big ego, but once you found out about his cancer treatment and that Kraven was practically inevitably gonna die anyway, it made his death and his want for death all the more impactful. The way I loved Kraven's character throughout this game, it was one of the best parts. Just touching on Venom real quick, I thought Venom was really cool. One of the best boss battles out of all 3 games combined. I absolutely loved it. And the ending with Harry practically going into a coma that he's never going to come out of was obviously, we saw it coming, but I also think it did wrap up his character pretty well. And we've got to remember that Harry's eventual death is going to be a major catalyst for things happening in the next game. Let's just quickly touch on the post-credit scenes. I felt like the post-credit scenes weren't as natural as the first game. For example, in the first game, it felt like we were uncovering something about Norman Osborn that had been lingering over the game the entire time, and it really added to his character and added to the depth of his character in that game. However, I felt like this post-credit scene with Norman and Otto was kind of like, hey, we're villains, we're gonna go catch Spider-Man in the next game. Look at us, we hate Spider-Man. It's like, yeah, we get it. We know that you're gonna be villains in the next game. We know that you're building to some dramatic conclusion. You don't have to tell us. Even though I wasn't really a fan of the first post-credit scene, the second post-credit scene, though, that was really cool. Cindy Moon, I'm really interested to see what they're going to do with her. I was not expecting that twist whatsoever. So whether she comes in Spider-Man 3, or maybe even a spin-off game, or some kind of DLC, I'm really excited to see how they utilize her. Just touching on the gameplay real quick, I thought the gameplay was absolutely phenomenal. In fact, it carries this game. What makes this game on par with the first one, in my opinion, is not necessarily the story, but it's the gameplay. Traversal, the combat system, everything was absolutely awesome. If you're saying that this was exactly the same combat system as the first game, all I'm going to say is, you're lying. It doesn't have to be a complete reinvention just because it's a sequel. It took what made Marvel Spider-Man 1 and Miles Morales work, and it improved upon it and made it 10 times better. But either way, that is my spoiler review for Marvel Spider-Man 2. Hopefully, those hot takes weren't too hot for you. Let me know in the comment section down below what do you think, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care. And peace.